Rio Ave was one of the best Portuguese clubs of the past decade. They've helped develop some notable players like Jan Oblak, Ederson, Fábio Coentrão and Mehdi Taremi, and they've also had the honor of competing in Europe multiple times. Still, I consider Rio Ave a very unlucky club. They were on the brink of making history several times, but for one reason or another, they simply couldn't get the job completely done. And to make matters worse, their fate is now in the hands of one of the most evil men in football. Someone who makes our corrupt figures look like absolute saints. In this video, I'm gonna show you how Rio Ave became a regular presence in the Portuguese league, how they always failed in the most important finals in their history, and just how dangerous the club's current owner really is. So first, and as usual, let me give you some context. Rio Ave was founded in 1939 with the goal of representing the city of Vila do Conde at the highest level. Though despite the good intentions, the club initially didn't have much success. For starters, they were often confused with Clube Desportivo das Aves, and beyond that, they spent the first 30 years of their history without any significant achievements. However, from the 1970s onwards, Rio Ave started earning respect. At the end of the 1976-77 season, they won the 3rd division, and that victory triggered a rapid rise. Just 2 years later, the Vila Conde secured their first ever promotion to the Primeira Liga. But their debut season had a bittersweet taste, as they finished last and were immediately sent back down to the 2nd tier. The first time is always rough, if you know what I mean, but better times were ahead. With José Mourinho's father, Félix Mourinho at the helm, Rio Ave not only returned to the top division, but also achieved an unprecedented 5th place finish. That gritty identity the club became known for over the decades was already taking shape, and with that same fighting spirit, Rio Ave kept developing and eventually reached the Portuguese Cup final in 1984. Of course, Porto at the time was one of the best European teams, and they were too big of a mountain for the Vila Condenses to climb, but it's impossible not to acknowledge how massive this achievement really was. At the time, Rio Ave wasn't even a fully professional club, yet they went toe-to-toe with teams far stronger than them. Maybe it was this close call with success, or maybe that had nothing to do with it, but that same year, Rio Ave decided to invest in professionalizing the club. And their first major step was building a new stadium, the brand new Estádio dos Arcos. There was a sense of optimism in Vila do Conde. Rio Ave even beat Sporting in the stadium's inaugural match, but in the end, that optimism was nothing more than just that. Ironically, that same season, Rio Ave was relegated to the 2nd division, and from there on, they could never quite stabilize in the top flight. They became pretty much a yo-yo team until the mid-2000s. On the other hand, this was also the period when many of the club's most iconic figures emerged. Augusto Gama, Niquinha, Evandro and Miguel Moura may not have been world-class players that major clubs dream of having as references, but they were always competent individuals who gave everything for the green and white jersey. And that is something that not only defines Rio Ave, but is also expected. Speaking of Rio Ave legends, it would be impossible not to mention the iconic Tarantini. The young midfielder had already shown promise as a teenager at Vila and later at Portimonense before joining the Vila Condenses in 2008. Coincidentally, the year that marked the beginning of the club's most successful era. Over 13 seasons with Rio Ave, Tarantini became the player with the most appearances in the club's history and a true leader for its golden generation. Of course, not everything was smooth sailing from the start. Rio Ave struggled in its first few seasons in the Primeira Liga, but their strong performances in the Portuguese Cup hinted there was potential for more. And that potential materialized with the arrival of Nuno Espírito Santo. The former goalkeeper always knew how to motivate a team. Even as a backup who rarely played, and when he did he often struggled, he was a respected and influential figure in the Porto squad that won 4 consecutive league titles in the 2000s. That same leadership fit perfectly at Rio Ave. Of course, credit also goes to President António Campos, who, much like the leader on the field, also joined the club in 2008. Campos always made it clear that Rio Ave wouldn't spend beyond its means and that the focus was long-term sustainability. And unlike so many other presidents with empty promises, Campos delivered. After 4 seasons of just surviving, Rio Ave finally invested in a squad capable of making their fans dream. In 2012-13, many of the club's young talents had become leaders, such as Vidas, André Villas-Boas, and of course, Tarantini. On top of that, 2 future legends emerged, Ederson and Oblak. Oblak, the starting goalkeeper between the two, played a crucial role in making Rio Ave's defense one of the league's best that season. In the end, Rio Ave finished in 6th place, ahead of Sporting, but just 3 points away from an unprecedented European qualification. The following season, their league campaign wasn't much better, but the club focused on knockout competitions and came agonizingly close to a historic season. In 13-14, Rio Ave had brilliant runs in both the Portuguese Cup and the League Cup, reaching finals by eliminating Braga in both competitions. However, they ran into Benfica in both finals and were soundly beaten. To make matters worse, they had yet another chance to win a major trophy the following season in the Super Cup, but once again, they faced Benfica and, as you might have guessed, they lost again. However, win or lose, just reaching the Portuguese Cup final opened the doors to Europe. Rio Ave made its Europa League debut with a group that, compared to many others, didn't seem impossible to get out of. Sure, Dynamo Kiev is a historic club, and Stoja had already won a Champions League, but they were beatable, just like Aalborg. Yet, when it mattered the most, Rio Ave once again disappointed, finishing bottom of their group. Even so, missing so many opportunities to elevate the club didn't seem to faze them. In the following years, Rio Ave continued to develop players and coaches at the highest level and had more chances to qualify for the Europa League, only to waste them all. In 2016, they were eliminated by Slavia Prague on away goals. In 2018, they crashed out against Jagiellonia Białystok after conceding 4 goals at home. But even after all these disappointments, nothing compares to what happened in 2020-21. That season, forever remembered for empty stadiums and masked players, saw Rio Ave shine in the Europa League qualifiers. First, they eliminated Borat. Borat? No, Borak. Next, they faced Besiktas, a Champions League caliber team, yet they held their nerve and eliminated the Turks on penalties after equalizing 5 minutes from time. Finally, they met the legendary AC Milan. In a chaotic match, Rio Ave led throughout extra time and was on the brink of reaching the Europa League group stage for only the 2nd time in their history in absolutely heroic fashion. But then, Milan equalized with a last-gasp penalty. The game went to a penalty shootout, and after a long battle, Rio Ave lost. All of Portugal, and every neutral fan who had the privilege of watching that game, applauded Rio Ave and predicted good things for them. Little did they know what was about to happen. After a decent first half of the season, Rio Ave completely collapsed in the second half. They went months without a win and managed just 12 points in 19 games. Against all odds, Rio Ave found themselves in a relegation playoff, and as they always do in most high-pressure games, they lost and were relegated to the 2nd division. That was how Tarantini's career ended, and that was how the greatest era in Rio Ave's history came to an end. Luckily, they bounced back immediately and returned to the Primeira Liga, but not everything is rosy. Since coming back in 2022, Rio Ave is no longer fighting for Europe. Their football has declined, and their squads are far weaker than in previous decades. However, a wildcard emerged in 2024, one that could either elevate the club to unimaginable heights or run it to the ground completely. Evangelos Marinakis, owner of Olympiacos and Nottingham Forest, invested around 20 million euros to acquire an 80% stake in Rio Ave's side. So far, everything seems fine. No one has tried to change the club's colors to red and white, nor turn it to a Greek feeder club. But let's be real, this piece of shit makes Pinto da Costa and Luís Filipe Vieira look like saints in comparison. To put it simply, he is basically the kingpin. It is well known that the Greek oligarch built his wealth and influence on an empire of illegal shipping and smuggling. But Throne, if he's such a dangerous criminal, why isn't he arrested? Oh, if only justice worked that well. Marinakis isolates himself from most of his criminal activity, and his PR strategy attempts to make him appear as a legitimate businessman. and every attempt at prosecution falls through, either because witnesses disappear or recant their statements, or due to the justice system mysteriously dropping the case. His web of influence is everywhere, just like his football empire, in Greece, in the biggest league in the world, in Portugal, and soon he might even expand to Brazil. I have serious doubts about whether he'll actually turn Rio Ave into something better. The stadium continues to rot to the point where it can no longer even host matches. But hey, maybe it's all part of the great Greek plan that simpletons like you and me just can't comprehend. But what do you think? Will Rio Ave ever win a major title? Or will they go down as just another failed millionaire project? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the best Portuguese football content on YouTube. I've already made countless videos about smaller Portuguese teams, even ones as random and unknown as Naval 1º de Maio. If you still remember those green and white stripes, you should check that video out. I guarantee you'll be questioning your whole existence by the time you finish watching. As always, thanks for sticking by, and I'll see you in the next one.